Tabana was an apologist for Socratic Christianity, probably a natus of 4 Anubis, who lived between the 8th and 9th centuries before Carino, likely in the second reign of Dalamek. Of his writings, only a portion survives, from which this fragment is taken. The hearts of all men dwell in the same wilderness. From the Dune Book of Irulan. Welcome to Reading Dune, a podcast where we read Dune Messiah by Frank Herbert and talk about it. Whether you're a Fremen or a first-time reader, this podcast is for you. I'm Caleb Pauls.
I'm Simon Dowdy.
And I'm Evan Diaz.
And together, we're going to read some Dune.
Yeah, we are.
Woo! All right.
With Simon, too.
Woo. Yeah, we had to bring back Simon for this chapter. Simon, you're from... I'll let you introduce yourself.
I'm from, thanks. I'm from DuneNewsNet.com, but I'm one of the founders and I'm the main editor and co-host of Dune Talk. Kind of a weekly podcast talking about the films and everything that's going on, but scheduling and stuff like that. So we'll be back to our bi-weekly soon, but if you're a fan of Super 7 toys, I'm going to hint the next podcast you might want to listen to, especially if you're into collecting toys. Dune toys.
Okay.
We got some new Dune toys coming up.
Some reaction, a little like vintage looking figures. So
Very
some
cool.
love for the Lynch movie. Some
Nice.
84. Yeah.
Love it. Well, we had Simon on for our introduction to Hayt episode.
Yeah.
Because Simon, you're a big Duncan fan. You're a Duncan stan, they may say.
I am, so much so that a Duncan might make a guest appearance. So if you see a pug walking around, a big boy, that is my little Duncan Idaho. So there's a Macy. She's a little bit crazy, but Duncan is the quiet type. And at first me and Duncan didn't see eye to eye. I think he's still my fiance's dog more than mine. So kind of goes, but sometimes I call him Hayt. So
There you go.
Yeah.
Well, this is definitely a big Duncan chapter, so
Yeah.
I had to reach out back to Simon again for this because this is like a this chapter I'm calling it the activation of the Ghola, right?
That makes
So,
sense.
Yep.
Evan, you just finished this chapter. What happens in this chapter?
Bijaz just really messes with Hayt / Duncan Idaho / who knows what or who he is at this point. That's literally what happens. And it makes sense that he would be activating him. I don't think they ever they might have said that. I think they did say that explicitly, but yeah, just Bijaz really messing with Hayt the whole time is really what happened.
Yeah.
Bijaz is kind of like a jerk, especially in this chapter. So I went back and reread this chapter earlier today to get ready for the show. As I was drinking coffee out of my Stay Spicy cup, people order your cup.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
No, but honestly, I was like, I love this character. Bijaz doesn't get the love that he should. And as I was thinking about it, maybe because our show, we talk more about movie stuff. I was like, who would I cast as Bijaz? Peter Cushing? Not Peter Cushing. What was the guy's name from Game of Thrones? I know I'm going to get
Dinklage.
There you go.
Dinklage.
I was like, okay, maybe because I was thinking small people, but I'm like, he can totally perform those lines. And him and Momoa, if they do it right, this can be an Oscar-winning scene. Seeing it.
Yeah, we're going to definitely get to that scene, and I don't know how I'm going to play it. We've played it several different ways because the Bijaz is such an interesting character the way he rhymes, the way he giggles at certain scenarios that shouldn't be funny. And we'll get there, obviously, as we get into the chapter. I just want to touch on this quote real quick before we dive in. Not a lot is kind of said. It's from Irulan, who's just quoting ancient history at this point.
Right.
Like, before Carino, in some reign of some emperor somewhere, there is some writer of religions who wrote down somewhere, the heart of all men dwell in the same wilderness. That's the key takeaway here.
Which by itself is maybe some good juice.
I think
I'm underlining as we speak.
Well, how do you think this quote applies to this chapter and what's happening with Duncan Idaho and Bijaz?
Oh, are you asking me or Simon? There's two of us now.
I don't. You pick whoever wants it.
I'll take it.
All right.
I mean, they talked about the Tleilaxu like creating custom religions and stuff at one point in this chapter.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe that reference to Tabana has something to do with that. I don't know who Tabana is, so I have no idea. But it said he was an apologist for Socratic Christianity, which I don't know what that is, but cool. But the hearts of all men dwell in the same wilderness. I don't know that I can put words to it, but it feels like it connects to what Duncan is going through right now. You know?
Okay.
Simon, do you have any thoughts?
I agree. That last line is very much what this chapter is about. Like we said early on, it's Duncan. I hate using the sleeper has awakened line, but it is. It's very much Duncan realizing, oh, this is my life now. Everything I thought, and we'll talk more about it, especially there's a couple of twists that I think Duncan is. I even actually highlighted under my book and I wrote, what? Like Duncan is probably just like, wait, what are you telling me about Paul? Like, what is he connected to? Like, where is this coming from? So I think that last line, and poor Erewhon, she has to do something. She has nothing else to do. Just reading old texts.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think that last line is very much the whole awakening part of Duncan realizing there is something going on. And the Tleilaxus do have their own weird, messed up religion.
Yeah.
Blitzgirl here on YouTube says maybe something like, we're all trying to find out who and what we are. And I think that kind of hits on that point. And we're going to see this, that Bijaz is trying to tap into Hayt, into the Duncan part of him deep down. And if he can touch that part, if he can awaken that part, that Duncan will kind of come out. And which we're going to learn has never happened before. This is an experiment to see if it works. So let's dive into the chapter now. Last time we saw Bijaz, right before the stone burner went off, and Stilgar whisked him away.
Stilgar picks him up, just running away with him. Like, me.
Horrible.
And so we had to put him straight into prison because what else is what you do? And he did give all the names, or some names, of some of the traitors, which led to Korba's trial and everything else, right? And so now Hayt has come to see Bijaz in prison at the order of Muad'Dib. Hayt is to interrogate the dwarf to determine what the Tleilaxu plot is in all of this. Because again, Paul never saw the dwarf at all. This is all new, so there's got to be a plot. They've been hiding him somehow. So, you're Bijaz, the Ghola said. I am called Hayt. The dwarf just looked up at him. You are not Hayt. You are Duncan Idaho. I was put there when they put your dead flesh into the tank, and I was there when they removed it, alive and ready for training.
I love right away he tells him, you're Duncan. Like, as soon as he walks in, F that hate stuff, you're Duncan.
Yeah.
Right, which is something that, okay, we have to go back to Hayt. Hayt is like wrestling with who he is. We had that chapter with Alia. He's like, he feels like there's everything of Duncan in him. Paul keeps calling him Duncan, but he's like, no, I'm Hayt. And then I guess the person that you would think, right, the person who made you or the same race of the people that made you, they would understand. And he's like, oh no, you're Duncan. And that's just got to be a mess tripping with his head.
Yeah.
So Hayt just swallowed dryly in his throat. Bijaz was just weird. There was a power beneath the dwarf's mask of cowardice. Hayt says why he's here, and at that the dwarf just sang. Tleilaxu, I'm the Tleilaxu, you dolt. For that matter, so are you. Hayt just stares the dwarf down. But Bijaz was just charismatic about the whole thing. Hayt then threatens that the dwarf, threatens the dwarf saying that he could call the guards in to strangle him. And the dwarf just says that Hayt had become so calloused and questioned if Hayt really had come here to seek the truth. Hayt is just, he hates everything about this. He says, perhaps I only seek the future. Well spoken, Bijaz said. Now we know each other. When two thieves meet, they need no introduction. So, we're thieves? Hayt said. What do we steal? Not thieves, but dice, Bijaz said. You came here to read my spots. I, in turn, read yours. And lo, you have two faces. So far, I'm just confused about what's happening.
Well, yeah, I think the two faces are also showing Bijaz kind of hinting, you are Duncan, but you're also Hayt. But, go back and forth between what you're struggling mentally.
Yes.
And the whole entire thing with Bijaz just started singing. I was like, he's insane.
Right.
Yes.
Right. Which is like, this chapter specifically, I got like Joker, Heath Ledger Joker vibes from Bijaz. Before it was like weird, like Oompa Loompa vibes where they're like being silly, but also creepy, but mostly silly. Like this feels like that, the Heath Ledger Joker. He's being like real sinister actually, but laughing and singing,
I was getting Joker vibes too.
Yeah, and it could be just Bijaz putting a shield against himself. I have nothing to lose at this point because if I mess up, I'm dead. Right. Anything I do, I know Paul will come after me, Maudit, and that's over. So why not just totally mess with Duncan and throw him off his game? And he does that at the end of this chapter.
Well, the thing is like, this is like Bijaz has come the long way around, kind of set up for this moment because he's going to give Duncan something else or Hayt something else. But yeah, okay. So let's continue here. Hayt asked a question he finds himself not wanting to ask. He asked if Bijaz was really here or he was really there when he was put into the tanks. Because again, Hayt is like still trying to figure out who he is in all of this. So it's like, did you really see me like go into the tanks and come out?
Yeah.
Did I not say it? Bijaz demanded. And at that, the dwarf bounced to his feet. We had a terrific struggle with you. The flesh did not want to come back. Hayt all of a sudden felt as if he existed in a dream controlled by somebody else's mind, and that at that moment he might have to overcome the twists and turns of that mind. Bijaz tipped his head to the side and started to walk around the Ghola, observing him. Excitement kindles old patterns in you. You are the pursuer who doesn't want to find what he pursues. Hayt swivels his head back to the dwarf, circling him. You're a weapon aimed at Muad'Dib. Is that what you're here to do? Nothing, Bijaz says, stopping. Hayt just continues. Then you're aimed at Alia. Is she your target? They call her Hot, the fish monster, on the Outworlds. How is it I hear your blood boiling when you speak of her? Bijaz said. Okay, I just want to stop here. We don't really get a lot of outworld perception of what's happening with
Right.
Muad'Dib. And I love that Alia is called the fish monster on the Outer Worlds. And I guess, yeah, we'll get into here what she is exactly here. The Ghola is just staring at the dwarf, studying his every move to see if he might give something away to what his purpose is. But this dwarfs keep giving odd responses. Bijaz continues. She is the virgin harlot. She is vulgar, witty, knowledgeable to a depth that terrifies, cruel when she is kind, unthinking when she thinks, and when she seeks to build, she is destructive as a Coriolis storm. And I came here to be captured by the magnetism of her physical beauty. Bijaz just grinned widely. His whole face was a smile at this point. So this is the Alia is like every female archetype in mythology. Like all of them. And on the Outer Worlds, she's like, I guess, the fish monster, which do we have a reference in our own mythology of a fish monster? Like the Leviathan, maybe, or a sea monster that just eats people alive? Like the thing that, right? Because
the only thing I can think of, sorry to interrupt, is Medusa, but still, that's not really a fish monster.
I mean, mermaids.
Those are
kind of
definitely
fish monsters, and they eat people.
Yeah.
Let's
I'm
not
still waiting
forget.
for Ariel to like hit me up. It's 1989. I want to be part of her world, but apparently she doesn't want to be part of my world. Just saying.
Anna Van Loon on YouTube says she is Lilith. Yeah. Ooh, she fits all of those female archetypes. When I think of ancient literature, the sea is kind of representation of chaos. And like Alia is pure chaos. And I just love that Bijaz came just to end everything. Just says, she is the scariest thing to ever walk in this universe, and I just want to be captured by her beauty. I just love that so much.
I also love, and I can't wait to see how Denis will do this if he gets the chance to do Messiah. Just Bijaz walking around Hayt/Duncan. Like, I feel like that has to be kind of super creepy. This whole entire chapter has to be kind of creepy, and you're really uncomfortable. Like, you have to be in Duncan's shoes when they make this and feel what he's feeling, like not sure of what's going on.
And it's almost like the rhymes and how Bijaz is stringing the words together. I'm sure Peter Dinklage, if he ever got the opportunity to do these lines, would absolutely kill it.
Oh yeah. He would be like stepping out of his like regular kind of role for sure,
to hit this Joker-esque type vibe.
Yeah. He could do it though. He's really good.
For sure.
And he's worked with Warner Brothers before.
Ooh.
It's I mean, if you're listening at this point.
Yeah.
Denis,
I mean, I know we're a couple of years away, but just saying.
Just saying. If you're a producer, happen to listen in. This is our thoughts. Take it or leave it. This whole chapter, I want you to feel like Duncan and how the words are set up. You feel stuck in the rhymes, almost, in this thing that's happening. I just think it'd be great. Hayt warned Bijaz that to attack Alia is to attack Muad'Dib. That is so clear. It is difficult to see, Bijaz said. Which is such a Bijaz thing to say.
That's so Bijaz.
Oh,
how can you say you can say something so in the sentence makes sense, but is so counterintuitive. It's like holding two things in the same hand. Bijaz says how the emperor and the sister are one person back to back, half male, half female, which is also another symbolism from mythology. And Hayt says that's the exact same thing that Fremen in the deep desert say. that's this myth that's spread about them, and all of that is just nonsense. Bijaz only says, "You dare say nonsense? You, who are both man and mask? Ah, but the dice cannot read their own spots. I forget this. And you are doubly confused because you serve the Atreides double being. Your senses are not as close to the answer as your mind is."
So, question for you guys:
Yep.
The double being. Do you think he's referencing Maldeed / Paul's heritage at this point?
Ooh. I
Because
picked up. I like where
Go
you're
ahead.
going with this. I picked up that you were just talking about Alia and Paul.
Yeah.
However, what were you going to say?
because spoiler for a couple pages from now, when Hayt / Duncan finds out about the Harkonnen bloodline, because that seems like a first revolution, like first time he's heard that ever in his life.
Yeah.
That
Yes.
Paul has Harkonnen blood. So I agree with you with the Leah thing, but going back and really thinking about it, I was like, are you just already hinting at a little shock for a couple minutes from now when I reveal something even more insane to you that will break you?
I mean-
Because we go to Duncan's history and with the Harkonnens, so kind of like I'm already planting the seeds to mess with you mentally, and that's what Bijaz does this whole entire chapter with.
Right.
I feel like everything he says is like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like
For sure.
everything has three meanings. And he's just working his way to what he wants. Hayt could feel his own mind being tangled by the dwarf's words. Bijaz says being on Arrakis here is to live in the shadow of the most dangerous creation the universe has ever seen. Hayt questions, dangerous? Creation? Their own mother refused to live on the same planet with them. Which I thought was pretty funny. That's pretty fair.
Yep. Jessica was like, peace.
I want nothing to do with you. Let me live my life on the rice paddies in Caladan. Hayt is now just getting pissed, as I think anybody would dealing with Bijaz, demanding Bijaz answer him straight. Bijaz says that he has answered him, and then continues to speak in more riddles. And that's the thing. Bijaz doesn't lie. He just says it confusingly.
Yeah. It just doesn't make sense.
He's very much the Yoda of the Dune universe. Like,
Right.
Hayt, are you not? Like, yeah.
Hayt says, you play a dangerous game with me. Do you think I could not understand these Zen Sunni ideas? You leave tracks as clear as those of a bird in mud. Bijaz just giggles. Why do you laugh? Hayt demanded. Because I have teeth and wish I had not, Bijaz managed to say between a burst of giggles. Have no teeth, I could not gnash them. What do you think, Simon?
That one, I'm still like, I had to go back. And when I was reading this chapter a couple of times, I'm like, all right, I know they're going to ask, what do I think of that line? Help. I am lost.
It wouldn't be Dune if some of us weren't lost.
Exactly.
I just think Bijaz is so close to fulfilling his purpose in this, and
Yeah.
he's like and Hayt's right on the edge.
Yeah.
And even when we go back to the chapter with the "Can You Kill a God" chapter, when Scytale says to Edric "Yo," or was it that chapter? Whatever. When Scytale says to Edric we need to push Hayt, have him start questioning this. We need this to start happening right now. And Hayt's even questioning himself and how this all works. And Bijaz is now sent to put the message in there. And Bijaz is so close. He's just having fun with this.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Okay. I had a thought about that line though. The
Yeah.
teeth line.
Yeah.
So he says, this is a couple paragraphs before Hayt says, "Why don't you answer me straight out? You know we have other ways of questioning you. We'll get our answers one way or another." So like this like line feels like his Joker response to like the threat of torture. He's like giggling. He's like, "What are you laughing about?" He's like, "Well, I was thinking about if I didn't have teeth when you tortured me, I wouldn't have any teeth to gnash. Like they wouldn't."
Can't pull them.
Dang.
Yeah. Okay.
Which
I
like,
like
it's
that.
freaky that he's giggling about it, you know? Just like the scene with the Joker in that movie when he's in the holding cell, and Batman comes to like, knock him around a little bit.
I'm Batman.
It's the same vibe, because he's laughing while he's getting the crap kicked out of him. But yeah, anyway.
And then Hayt figures it out. And I know who your target. You were aimed at me. Ding, 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 ding. Bijaz said, and you made such a big target. How could I miss? Bijaz just nods his head to himself. And now I will sing to you. Which is like the worst thing you want to hear from in this situation. Like, oh, now that you figured out, let me sing you a song. With that, right. Bijaz began to hum. A whining, monotonous theme repeated over and over. All right,
this is like the sleeper cell song, right?
I'm gonna ask you, Evan, to give me a hum. All right, start humming for me.
To give you a hum,
a monotonous hum.
A monotonous hum.
Hayt stiffened, experiencing odd pains that played up and down his spine. He stared at the face of the dwarf, seeing the youthful eyes of an old face.
Was that all right?
That was beautiful.
Okay.
I hope you could hear me reading over you.
It's like an audiobook.
Yeah. It was like his eye. So, okay, Hayt is just now, the humming is happening. His like body has become transfixed by the music. And he's just staring at the dwarf. And all of a sudden, it's like the eyes are the center of this network with knobby lines that run out. He's just like staring at his face. Hayt notices how large of a head Bijaz has. The sound Bijaz was making reminds Hayt of ancient rituals, folk memories, old words, custom. Something vital was happening here and now. Something was tangled into the dwarf's singing. It was like a blazing light in the distance coming nearer and nearer. Hayt gasps, What are you doing to me? Bijaz stopped his humming to say, You are an instrument I was taught to play, and I'm playing you. Let me tell you the names of other traders among the Naibs. At this, Bijaz starts naming off Fremen, the Secretary of Korba, Banerjee's right-hand man. Hayt just shook his head from side to side. He found it difficult to talk. Bijaz continues, We are like brothers. We grew up in the same tank. I first, and then you. Okay. I think we can do this here. Simon, how does that work? How was Bijaz in the tank first and then Duncan?
So what I remember, and it's been a hot minute since I really went back to Messiah and later on, cloning process, right? Or am I off?
No. Okay. So the Tleilaxu is working to I think everybody wants me to do this now. This is how the Tleilaxu work. Is they work on cloning. So like they put Duncan Idaho's flesh into the tank, and they then regrow it back, and all those. So it's the same person, but they can then reprogram the brain to do certain things, but it's still the same flesh.
I think the best way to describe it without spending 2 hours on it is Star Wars, you got a model, you got a clone of Jango Fett, created the clone army. Now in Dune, it's, hey, I'm going to cut off this limb. We can make another Simon out of this limb, pretty much, but with different implanted memories.
Okay.
Right. And Bijaz, all the Tleilaxu are made like this. So, yeah, they shared the same tank.
Yeah, it's kind of like the more as like the Matrix came out back in the early 2000s when we see Neo pop out of the tank. My first reaction was like, I wonder if that's what Frank Herbert was writing about, originally in Dune. But it's one tank, it's one melting pot. It's not like we each have our own pod. That's the way I've also thought about it.
I might question you on that as we learn later on in stuff in Heretics, as we learn more about tanks. Because we do know that the Tleilaxu are an all-male group because of what they did to the females.
That's many, many years from now.
Yeah, that's also true. And how they did that. But yeah, that's, I don't know how much I can get into on that.
Me neither.
Yeah.
I'm sure.
Evan's like, I have no idea what's happening.
I cannot add to this conversation right now at all.
So here's my question for you, since we both read the further books. Do you think Frank had an outline for that at this point?
Ooh. Probably, I think he had to, okay, if I'm going to place myself in Frank's shoes, I probably would have built out the Tleilaxu race and built it out how it all worked. And their different philosophies. Do I know that Bijaz is a Tleilaxu master? I don't know. I think that's what he is. That's also not confirmed in this book. Because there are, we broke it down, I think at the beginning of Messiah, the Tleilaxu have 3 different, it's a caste system with masters on the top. Then you have your Gholas and your face dancers. And the face dancers are pretty much the slave race to the masters itself. Yeah. And I believe Bijaz is a master, which
it seems like it.
But no one knows the masters exist yet.
Yeah.
Everyone's only dealt with face dancers and Gholas.
Right.
But I don't want to go into too much spoilers also for people that are going on the journey.
Yeah.
But also, I had this thought just about this chapter, and it applies to what we're talking about now. Bijaz speaks on behalf of the Tleilaxu this whole time.
Yes.
He says we over and over again. And he says he talks as if he were in some way high level involved with the Tleilaxu. So I would agree with what you're saying, just from the context of the words you're using.
Yeah. No, I think that's a great point, because he does say it's a this is a plan of the Tleilaxu to take down Muad'Dib and the Empire, and they have a plan. We're gonna see what that plan is as Bijaz makes Hayt into a human distrans. So the humming just continues. Evan, hit me with some hums. Hayt's middle eyes inflicted him with a sudden burning pain. Flickering red haze surrounded everything he saw. He felt he had been cut away from every immediate sense except the pain he experienced, his surroundings through a thin separation like wind-blown gauze. So, Hayt is freaking out. He's not. He's being programmed at this point, and there's something underneath there tapping into it. He sees the world like just as a thin sheet over it. Desperate for clarity, Hayt broke through the gauze curtain with a lonely sense of sight. His attention was completely focused on the dwarf in front of him. Hayt felt the stare pierce through layers of the dwarf, seeing a little man as a hired intellect, and beneath that, a creature imprisoned by hungers and cravings, which lay under layers and layers, or you could say clones of layers and clones of layers, until finally there was only an entity being manipulated by symbols. So he's just seeing the code, which is kind of being implanted in him. Hayt freed his voice, saying, "You cannot force me to slay Muad'Dib." Bijaz only said, "You believe the silly emperor was the prize we sought. How little you understand our masters, the Tleilaxu. The Guild and the Bene Gesserit believe we produce artifacts. In reality, we produce tools. Anything can be a tool. Poverty, war. War is useful because it effectively uses so many areas. It enforces government. It diffuses genetic strains. It possesses a vitality of nothing else in the universe. Only those who recognize the value of war and exercise it have a degree of self-determination. So Bijaz is doing his villain monologue here.
Well, you know what? It's pretty brave of Frank writing that, especially when this came out. What was going on in the world?
Continue.
I mean, what was the release date of Messiah? I'm trying to look at.
Pulling up the Google.
69.
69.
Copyright 69 in this book. So when you think about what's going on in especially U.S. politics with Vietnam and all that, Frank, let's face it, Dune is very political, and Bijaz kind of hinting like, hey, even war can control politics and governments. That's what I got from it. But maybe that's just my crazy,
I mean,
mind.
War, and you even look at this at of like just economically, like America's used war several times to get out of recessions and depressions, right? It's an economic machine because you have to produce things to get things over there and everything else, and how you use war effectively really has been how governments have been formed, right? We can go back to Genghis Khan. We can go back to, we can just keep going back, the Romans itself, and how they used it. Did Paul use war in this effect? That's my question.
I think so. I mean, when you think about the jihad that he created, he did bring a new luxury to Arrakis, you can say.
Yeah.
That's a whole different topic for a whole different time.
Right. I'm like, maybe Paul used it for that sense, but who else was using Paul's wars for their own agenda?
Exactly.
Bingo.
That's a big question there.
Everyone capitalizes off of it, and I love one of the lines later when Bijaz mentions Chon, like his Chon prophets.
Right.
I'm like, yep, big business right there.
Yeah.
Right.
Hayt tried to regain his composure. Strange thoughts coming from you. You are trying to awaken violence in me. Bijaz just shakes his head no. Awaken? Yes. Violence? No. You are a disciple of awareness by training. So you have said, I have an awareness to awaken in you, Duncan Idaho. Hayt just screamed back his own name. I'm Hayt. Duncan Idaho. Killer extraordinaire, lover of many women, swordsman, soldier, Atreides field hand. You are Duncan Idaho. The past, it cannot be awakened. Cannot? It's never been done. True. But our masters defy the idea that something cannot be done. Always they seek the proper tool, the right application of effort. The Ghola just says that Bijaz is hiding his real purpose. So Bijaz doubles down. There is a Duncan Idaho in you. It will submit to emotion or to dispassionate examination, but submit it will. This awareness will rise through a screen of suppression. It goads you even now while it holds you back. There exists that being within you upon which awareness must focus and which you will obey. Hayt fights back. The Tleilaxu think I'm still their slave. Quiet, slave, Bijaz says in a whining voice. Hayt found himself silenced, frozen. Hayt says they're almost there. There's almost enough leverage to flip the switch. Hayt could feel the sweat pouring out of him, running down his face, but he was stuck. He couldn't move. Bijaz then gives the plan. One day, the emperor will come to Hayt and say, "She is gone." He will give water to the dead. And Hayt will say, "Master, oh master." Hayt's jawline now is tightened. His throat ached. You will carry a message from Bijaz. Poor Bijaz, who has no mind. Poor Bijaz, a drum stuffed with messages, an essence for others to use. Pound on Bijaz, and he produces a noise. Evan, I saw your hand was up.
Yes. Okay. We were talking about Bijaz being a master Tleilaxu, but then since we talked about that, he has said our masters, the Tleilaxu.
Yeah.
And then in this last paragraph says poor Bijaz who has no mind. Poor Bijaz, a drum stuffed with messages, an essence for others to use. Like now I'm starting to think like maybe Bijaz is just like a vessel or like a spokesperson on behalf of like the Tleilaxu head honcho people, because he's like speaking as if he were them, but also he's like talking about how he's basically just a thing full of messages, a thing full of words that come out however they come out. You know what I mean? I don't know.
I think it could be Bijaz just being like, "Oh, poor Bijaz. No one loves me. No one cares about me."
Yeah.
Probably mess with Duncan even more.
I'm going to use both of your points because I like them both. When we talk about Tleilaxu cloning, right? How often would you like to, like, there's a job to be done and know you can do it, but you're probably going to die doing it?
Yeah.
You might as well just make a clone of yourself and send you.
Oh, okay.
And they're expendable flesh. You program with them what you want to do, and then here you go, get it done. That's exactly what you're supposed to do. That's just an idea I had. There's no backing to that. People are going to be raging mad in
the comments.
in the comments, or email us all your angry comments at readingdune@gmail.com. I'd love to hear.
We will absorb your hate.
Bijaz is real. He's not a clone.
He is not a master. What are you saying? It's so obvious. Can't you see it? That's okay. Obviously not.
Second paragraph, page 422. Frank wrote it right there. It's like a crossword puzzle. If you select certain letters, there's a hidden message there.
Oh, yeah, that's exactly it. I don't know. Sometimes I don't even know if Frank knows. To Simon's point, does Frank have this all planned out? Sometimes yes, sometimes no.
Look, it was the 60s, man. It was the 60s in Washington/Oregon.
Yeah, we don't know what's happening.
It's amazing.
He had a really big success on his hands. He had to come up with a sequel. He just threw things together. I mean, who knows? I don't. Bijaz just grimaces. You think me a hypocrite, Duncan Idaho? I am not. I can grieve too. But time has come to substitute sword for words. A hiccup. Shook Hayt. Bijaz just giggled. Thank you, Duncan. Thank you. The demands of the body save us. As the Emperor carries the blood of the Harkonnens in his veins, he will do as we demand. Hayt just blinks. What did Bijaz mean? Harkonnen blood? In the Atreides? Bijaz continues his monologue, saying how Duncan would find it hard to not slay a Harkonnen.
Right.
That's in his nature.
That's what he was originally programmed for. I mean, trained from birth, pretty much.
Yeah, he was trained to be this assassin soldier to kill Harkonnens and Sardaukar and whoever else needed to be killed. And that's their mortal enemies. And even Paul doesn't know he's a Harkonnen until after Duncan dies.
Yeah.
So there's this gap there. Bitter rage and frustration coursed through the Ghola, but he didn't know why. Bijaz then relies more of the message Hayt is supposed to deliver. All right, so the Tleilaxu can restore Paul Atreides' beloved by making Chani a Ghola after she dies. This Ghola will bear Paul's children. It will love only him. The Tleilaxu can even improve on the original if Paul so desires. I don't know what that would mean, but they can do that. And when Paul is tempted and lost in thought, that is the moment that Hayt has to strike. But because the Tleilaxu masters demand 2 Gholas, not 1. So what 2 Gholas do they demand?
Well, I think it's Duncan and Chani, obviously, that they demand to take Paul out. Because if you got Duncan, I've always read and always imagined as Paul's best friend,
Right.
And Chani is Paul's love of his life. Erlen's just whatever.
Right.
Yeah, she's pretty. Thank you, Francis Pugh. But I feel like if you gather the 2 most important people in his life currently, Leto was one of those people, but sadly Leto is gone and, he's just ashes now. And Jessica's off being like, screw this, I'm done. I think Duncan and Chani are more important even than Alia to Paul. Those are what makes Paul.
Yeah.
And if they gather against him, then they can easily defeat Paul.
Did you read it? This is interesting. Did you read that as, and I made me, okay, that's the moment that Hayt's to strike. Is Hayt supposed to kill Paul? Or is Hayt supposed to...
Go ahead.
I think
he's
just supposed to offer the Chani Ghola.
Okay.
At no point did he say like, and now you will strike. It was literally just like when he says this, then now he's continuing it like.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. I think it's just Chani.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I think Chani dies at that point, and Hayt Duncan's like, my lord, there's something we can do. We can rebuild her. We can make her better. I think that's what he's supposed to do, not attack Paul physically.
Okay.
I think attack Paul mentally.
Right. And what Hayt has done through this whole book has been the great Tleilaxu salesman. And always said, the Tleilaxu could do that. The Tleilaxu could do that. So that would be on brand. Okay. Hayt says he won't do it. But Bijaz said, but Duncan Idaho would. It will be a moment of most vulnerability for the descent of the Harkonnens. Duncan is to offer asylum as you move close to Paul. You're supposed to give him a planet of choice somewhere beyond the Imperium. Think of it. He has his beloved restored, no need for tears. He can go live out his life. The only price he has to pay is to denounce his godhead, discredit himself and his sister and the Quizzerat, and naturally give up his Chome holdings. Yeah, cool. Relinquish his Chome holdings. Just disappear. Yeah. And if Duncan is still not close enough to strike, then he's to tell Paul how much the Tleilaxu admire him and taught them the possibilities of religion and religious engineering. See, when I read that, and I could definitely be wrong, I'm probably wrong, but I do feel, all right, so that's the programming in him, and the Duncan Idaho is supposed to come out, and Duncan Idaho is supposed to kill Harkonnens, and he's supposed to line them up and get Paul to, go into this a little bit. Is he supposed to, strike him there? But I don't know. I don't know. It could go so many ways here about
There's something I just thought of as you were speaking. So if Chani dies, and this might be a spoiler.
Well, we've been forecasting she's going to die the whole book, pretty much.
Right. And the kids are born. Aren't the kids technically still Harkonnens down the line? They have Harkonnen blood in them. So why won't they try taking out the kids also?
That makes more sense.
I was just thinking, okay, so you kill Paul, cool. Harkonnen line stops. You still have his sister around, and maybe they have a plan for her. But the kids are Harkonnen. They're still I want to say maybe a quarter Harkonnen at that point.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, also, they said that the Ghola Chani would bear his children, right?
Right.
Yes. Well, it could be later children
Right. So I'm
on some
thinking
other
like,
world.
yeah, I'm thinking like maybe those Ghola children would have some way of being controlled by the Tleilax or something like that. I don't know.
So what?
Also a
She's
thing.
programmed to have. I hate saying artificial kids, but
Right.
with the Tloxu, you
Right.
never
What
know.
does that look like when a Ghola gives birth to a child? Like, how does that work? We don't know.
Right. So
It's
Bijaz
tricky.
says that Duncan has to tell Paul that he needs to make a decision quickly, which is, of course, the worst and a great salesman tactic. You need to make a choice right now because they must get Chani's flesh into a cryological tank. Right? So as soon as Paul says to Hayt, she is dead, this is supposed to happen. Hayt found himself floundering, caught in a matrix of objects he could not recognize. The dwarf seemed so sure of himself. Bijaz smiled and then said, "Now you will forget. When the moment comes, you will remember. When he says, 'She is gone,' that is when Duncan Idaho will awaken then." The dwarf clapped his hands, and Hayt grunted, feeling like he'd been interrupted in the middle of a thought. Or perhaps in the middle of a sentence. What was it? Something about targets? He yelled at the dwarf. "You think to confuse me and manipulate me?" Bijaz just asked. "How is that?" "I'm your target. You can't deny it." "I would not think of denying it." "What is it you try to do with me?" "A kindness. A simple kindness," Bijaz says.
So he just jumped all the way back to the beginning of the conversation where they were talking about who the target is.
Yeah. So that ends the chapter. The plan has been set in the Ghola by Bijaz, who has went the long way around to get this to happen.
Mm-hmm.
We are now in we're close to the final act here on what's happening next. We have another Duncan chapter. See what he's going to do next week. Thank you, Simon, for joining us. You guys have any final thoughts on this chapter?
I had one thought that I didn't talk about while we were reading. The whole thing that Bijaz does with Hayt/Duncan feels like the scene in Civil War where the Sokovian guy wakes up wakes up the Winter Soldier.
Right.
Like reading the words. I feel like the humming was that same thing where he just like started like really messing with him, and then he was able to implant the message, and then he turned it back off. Like that was the movie reference in my brain for that moment.
It's like
It's weird.
Freight train.
Bucky is my favorite Marvel character, and I never thought about that. And Duncan is my favorite Dune character.
I think you got a theme happening there, Simon.
You're welcome.
And I love clones in Star Wars, so I don't know.
Well, at least you're predictable.
Simon secretly is a sleeper agent for some intelligence organization. He doesn't even know it.
Waiting to be awakened.
Podcast.
I don't know what you're talking about. Thank you, guys. Thank you for having me on. Always a pleasure. Love what you guys are doing. People, support them. Get a cup. Get a shirt. Get something.
Yo, thank you. And stay spicy, my friends. We'll see you in the next chapter.
Peace.
Peace.